as Amber mentioned, if everyone could be muted apart from the speakers, that would be great. And so just to introduce Beverley, Beverley is from Anderley Therapeutic Services, and we're just so fortunate to have you here. I'm sure that you are all Cantabrians, I think, and as you'll all know, we've been through a lot in our community over the last 10 years with our earthquakes, the terror attack last year, and now, of course, a pandemic, just for good measure. And, you know, that does create a lot of anxiety, and for our young people as well. Often think of the, you know, our young ones who are perhaps now in their late teens who have experienced all of these events. So there's a lot for people to process, and we're so grateful to have Beverley here to give us talk through some tips and techniques and talk through anxiety and some of the issues, and for us as women, but also for our children as well, and how we can support ourselves and support them through this extraordinary time as well. So just to tell you a little bit about Beverley, she immigrated to New Zealand in 2008 after completing her PhD from the University of Hertfordshire. Beverley's a counsellor and an art therapist who specialises in working with children and adolescents with complex needs and alongside their families and their schools as well. And over the last 20 years, she's worked in a range of quite various and quite amazing roles in a range of settings, including manager of a social service provider, a lecturer, researcher, consultant, supervisor, and as a practitioner. So we're in very, very good hands tonight, and we're so fortunate to have you here with us tonight, Beverley. Thank you so much. So let's get started. So as we all know, tomorrow we're moving into level 2, and our world will start to return to some kind of new normal, whatever that looks like, and that's, you know, quite an uncertain thing. But what we do know is that people are going back to work, children are preparing to go back to school, and you know, we're all going to start mixing with a greater number of humans, and I guess with that, Beverley, comes there's probably a bit of excitement or a bit of relief that this stage of the lockdown's over, but I guess it's quite normal to be feeling, you know, some anxieties around that as well.
Absolutely. I'd just like to say, first of all, thank you for inviting me, and it was really nice to kind of hear from Rebecca out of the blue. I haven't had contact with Rebecca for many years, and it wasn't until I read the email a couple of times I thought, I know that name. Where do I know that name from? And then it clicked. So it took me a wee while. Sorry for that, Bex, but lovely to hear from you. And I also just wanted to say, as you were talking there, Jo, suddenly I thought, oh gosh, my vagal break is coming off and I'm beginning to feel a bit anxious and a bit nervous myself. I do hope I will meet the standard.
It'll be great.
But yes, absolutely. We're moving into level 2, and there is a high level of anxiety for some people around that. Much around unpredictability. What is it going to be? What is it going to look like? And I really want to focus tonight and help you understand a little bit more about your neurobiology. And our neurobiology needs predictability. It feels safe when things are predictable. And when they're not predictable, we need certain things to help us and support us through that.
Excellent. So how is the current situation impacting on what sorts of things, perhaps ways in which anxiety may be manifesting, perhaps for us as women, but also in our children? What kind of issues are you seeing that are cropping up?
So if we kind of separate them, and we think first of all of us as women or us as mums, again, that unpredictable situation. Nobody knows what it's going to be like in level 2. Will things start expanding? Will the virus take hold again? Will it not? There are all sorts of things that nobody can answer because we don't know the answers to that one. So as mums and as women, we can be a bit anxious about that and a bit concerned. And how do we explain that to our children? And how do we try and offer some confidence to our children and reassurance to them when we don't know the answers either? So we're seeing people obviously naturally worried about that. Do they want to send their children back to schools? Do they want to actually leave their bubbles? And really thinking around that. For children, we can see a real range of kind of symptoms and manifestations of that, from the obvious to the tears and the worry, not being able to get to sleep at night, to children that kind of just become a little bit compulsive in what they're doing, and it has to be done this way and it has to be reoccurring in that way, that kind of says, I'm not okay at the moment, I'm not feeling too safe. And that's their way of communicating without using words. So a real range, and I'm sure some of the mums here this evening will have kind of their stories on what they're seeing with their children or what they're seeing with themselves.
Absolutely. And so how does, if we're feeling anxious, how might that impact on our children?
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about polyvagal theory. And polyvagal is this wonderful understanding that Stephen Porges has offered us to help us understand our nervous system. And our nervous system, as I said, needs predictability, but it's there to keep us safe. And if we don't have predictability, then we can start getting anxious. And what happens, we have something which he calls as a vagal brake. And you heard me say in the beginning, I could feel my vagal brake coming off. As my vagal brake starts coming off, what happens is my heart rate starts to increase and my breathing becomes a little bit more shallow, and my body is saying, oh, there's a bit of a threat going on here, and I'm getting ready to either fight, to flight, or to freeze. So, and what I really want you to understand, guys, is it's not a cognitive process. I can say to myself in my head, of course I'm safe, there's beautiful people here, absolutely fine. My neurobiology is a separate component that works with my brain, but it will decide for itself. So if we're feeling really, really anxious and we are communicating that via our tone of our voice, you'll hear me say this evening a few words around prosody. And prosody really is our intonation of our voice. And we all tune in to prosody. So if we're feeling a little bit anxious, the tone of our voice is going to come a little bit higher or a little bit lower. More lower if you're a man, higher if you're a woman. That will tell somebody else's nervous system, oh, there's something to be a little bit worried and anxious about. So our children will pick that up. The other area that we communicate beautifully from is the muscles around our eyes. So when we become a little bit anxious, and you're not aware of this, guys, unless you're really, like me, have been into polyvagal theory, I'm constantly thinking about my facial muscles. But somebody else will read that anxiety in my face. And you could be saying to your child, everything's going to be fine, you're going to have this wonderful time, but your tone of your voice or the muscles in your face might be giving a different message to your children. So first of all, we need to tune into ourselves as women and as mums. And we have to think about our tone of our voice and our facial muscles. And if we can manage to soften our face and have that smiley face, and try and think about, when you're talking to a baby, when you talk to a baby, you go into a bit of a sing-songy voice, yeah? It's very melody sounding, and it's a very smiley face. If we can keep that sort of thing when we interact with our children, that will help their nervous system stay in a really good place. And it will enable them to then be able to hear what you're saying.
Does that relate to older children as well, so teenagers who you can't really pretend?
Yeah. Actually, Jo, it relates to everybody. Everybody interacts in this way, and it isn't just children, it's adults to children, adults to teens, and vice versa. This is what our neurobiology does, and we read other people's neurobiology, and it's a process called neuroception. So when we first engage with somebody and we first look, and I'm just picking somebody randomly, let's say Chrissy, when I'm looking at you, there is a process called neuroception that happens, and you decide, am I safe? Can I engage with this person, or do I need to start preparing myself? It happens in split seconds, and it's not cognitive. It's not something we can control with our brain. It's just something that happens with our body. And why I think it's so important, if we have that awareness of that, we can start kind of hijacking it. So as parents, we can start thinking of some safety cues on what we can do to help keep our children, our husbands, our partners, family, friends, we can help keep them in a good neuroceptive state. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, I'm not used to not having any feedback, so
it's only me feeding back, sorry.
yeah.
No, that really does make perfect sense. That describes it really well. So I guess, but how do we do that if we are feeling anxious? How do we we obviously have to fake it to a degree, so we're having to be, you're saying we've got to be very mindful of how we do that, even if on the inside we're not really feeling like that.
Feeling it, absolutely. So really good question there, Jo. How do we do it? So we do this, we're thinking about our cues of safety. And as I said, prosody, really, really important. The tone and intonation of our voice. Get that one in check, guys, before you start talking to your children. Muscles of the face, keep them really relaxed and smiley and happy, so they're not picking up and reading kind of anxieties. Then the other thing to help them think about, one of the quickest ways to bring our vagal brake back on and bring our heart rate down is breath. Breath works absolutely beautifully. And you hear some people saying about, just breathing in and breathing out. What we don't want to do is that, because the moment we do that, our nervous system are thinking, oh, there's something to be worried about here. So what I want you to hear me say is it's really important to slow the talking down and slow the breath down. So playing games, if we've got little children, things like bubbles and blowing out the candle, those type of activities and games. And we want the breath out to be slightly longer than the breath in. Teenagers, same sorts of things, they might engage in more sort of square breathing. So breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, and just slowing that down. But you can actually do it even with your talking. And you'll notice when I started talking then I just consciously decided to slow down. And as I'm slowing down, that's changing my breath and it's bringing my vagal brake back on. So breath is your first point of call.
Yeah, because it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because it's almost like a vicious cycle, isn't it? If we are anxious, our children get anxious. If our children are anxious, we get anxious. So we've kind of got to be the ones that break that cycle. Is that sort of...
Absolutely, that's exactly what I'm saying. You cannot say to your child, calm down or don't worry about this. They're reading all the signs and signals from your face, your tone of voice, and from your breath that actually mummy's worried about this. So we need to tune into ourselves first of all, and we need to be able to regulate ourselves and calm ourselves. Another portal into our nervous system is through listening and music. Music is exceptional at calming the body down. So if we're thinking about the work of Tomatis, which some of you may know, may not know of his work, he would say Mozart. Mozart has amazing frequencies to work with the nervous system and help regulate. Stephen Porges, the author of polyvagal theory, he would say Disney. Disney and rapping are really good music to help calm the body. And he would just say, play Disney, play Disney, play Disney. And some people go, oh, no, not Disney. But most Disney films do have a feel-good factor to them. And part of that is the frequency of the music that we're listening to. So again, if you can feel yourself feeling a bit anxious, guys, get the music on. And I always say to my clients and the families that I work with, if you're not into Disney and you're not into rap and you're not into Mozart, listen to something that you enjoy, something that makes you feel good. So when you find Monday morning, when you're getting ready for school and things are getting a little bit anxious and that, get the music on, sing a little. And if you don't feel like singing, hum. Hum away. Your children will respond to that and they'll start doing that themselves, and it will help them regulate themselves when they start singing.
And And what about for teenagers? Does the same things apply again? So you've got a teenager who's anxious about going back to secondary school next week. How would you approach that?
Exactly the same way. I would be using breath. I would be getting them to listening to music. And teenagers actually are really, really good at listening to music. It's their go-to place. And they may not listen to music that we enjoy listening to, but they listen to music that makes them feel good. They're fantastic at it. Get them going. It helps them regulate. But the other thing, Jo, I wanted to say about that is also thinking children and teenagers, let's think about actually connecting and empathizing with them. So it's really, really important if we can think, let's drag in a bit of neuroscience and think about the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain. So our downstairs brain is where we react, it's spontaneous, it's where all our emotions come from. Our upstairs brain is more our logical thinking part. And that little gateway up to our upstairs brain is developing right up to we're about 25, 26 years old. So it's not fully online when we're little. And we need a lot of exercise, a lot of practice about getting into the upstairs brain. One of the ways that we can do that is empathizing with a child and communicating to them that we're understanding where it is from their perspective. So, for example, little one's really crying, unhappy. I don't want to go to school, mummy. I'm frightened. I'm worried about what's going to go on. Oh, that feels like really big worries that you have there. I wonder where you feel that. Do you feel that in your tummy, or do you feel that in your chest, or where are you feeling those big feelings? Gosh, that must be really hard. I'm wondering at the moment whether we could just breathe. Let's try and breathe into those feelings and let's try and blow them away. So we're empathizing, we're connecting, and we're offering a strategy. Once we've got them a little bit calmer, we've got them engaged in their upstairs brain, and we've got their social engagement system back online, so the vagal brake is back on and they're in a place where they can actually hear you, then you can start saying to them things like, I know you're worried about going back to school under level 2, but let's think about some of the good things that were happening in school. What are the things you're really looking forward to? What are you excited about? And trying to get them to engage that upstairs brain into some of the positive things, which will help shift the nervous system and it will help them process worries.
Oh, that's so fascinating. I'm really interested in what you're saying about the neuro science side of things. It's a different way of looking at things, but it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, when you think about it that way?
Yeah. And for parents, just to understand, when you're in that emotional part of your brain and at the same time your nervous system is in a slightly activated state, you cannot hear. And people generally only start to regulate and calm down when they feel listened to and heard. And it's no different for our children. Yeah, so we have to let our children know, even if we disagree, but we understand how they're experiencing the world at that moment.
And so what are some of the things, you described that so beautifully, what you would say to, say, a primary school age children, but what would you say to a teenager who perhaps might be acting out in a different way to their
Yep.
anxiety?
Yep. So for the teenager that's not very good about talking about feelings at the moment, and they're a little bit stressed out, so they might be, yeah, whatever, and just playing the music really loud, or I'm not going to school, can't make me, can't force me, that sort of attitude. Again, I would be saying, using my prosody, keeping my tone of voice really gentle and keeping a smiley face. It's really hard going back to school, and there's some things that you must be really worried about, but maybe that's really hard to talk about. I would imagine and give them a scenario of what you think. You know your children best. Offer what you think that they're really worried about. And it could be, will under level 2, will I catch COVID-19? Am I safe? And they could be really, really worrying about that, but not able to articulate it. So we articulate it for them. Don't expect some teenagers to be smiley. Yes, mum, you've got it. You've understood it. Sometimes they will be quite aggressive back to you and say, oh yeah, whatever. I'm not thinking that. But stay with it, guys. Stay with the tone of voice, stay with the smiley face, and stay with them. And just say, yeah, it's really hard to think about these things. Do you know, mum's here if you want to talk about it. And I was thinking, some of the things when I get a little bit worried, it really helps me if I put some music on that makes me feel calmer. What do you think would help you?
Mm, mm.
So offering them a suggestion and trying to get them to think of some situations for themselves.
Mm. Oh, that's great. So really, I guess what you're saying is that whether we're anxious or our children are anxious, it really kind of starts with us to lead that taming of the anxiety and getting everybody back to the calmness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I really want you to hear me say, guys, you're not going to be able to do it for your children until you can do it for yourself. And I know Niamh is with us. Where are you, Niamh? Here this evening. And next week, Niamh will be talking through lots more strategies around mindfulness and helping us manage that.
Yes, no, that's great. No, we're so delighted to have both of you giving us your amazing input. Thank you so much. So we've got a few questions, specific questions. We may have actually already, in fact, I think we have actually answered quite a few of them already. So how do I reassure my child if I'm feeling anxious myself? So as you've said there, it's really employing these techniques, isn't it? So
yes. Yeah, so just reiterating what I've said, start with yourself, guys, get yourself calm. Yeah, get some music on, get some singing going, get some humming going, or even some movement. You know, sometimes if I'm feeling really anxious, you know, just like shake the body out. And when we move our bodies, it releases that kind of built up energy. So just have a little shake out. Kids find it great fun. Often, you know, when they come into my office and into a session, there's been a bit of tension going on. So what we'll do, we'll just shake things out to bring ourselves present. So do that for yourselves as well. Then connect with your children and what they're worried about, empathize with them. Yeah, give them some strategies, breath, movement, singing, listening to music, and then offer them some positives. Let's think about, you know, engaging upstairs brain. What are you looking forward to? And who could you talk to in the day? Who's approachable in the day in your school that you feel safe to go and talk to if you're really worried?
That's great advice. And you've already touched there on the creating the calm and kind conversations with our children. So that also flows on from, kind of getting ourselves in the position to do that for a start, and then being mindful about how we deliver our message to the children as well. Yeah, that's great. So have you got any advice for how we explain the transition to level 2 specifically? You know, would you have any advice for, I think you've sort of touched on a little bit there of what some of their worries might be, but would you have any advice on the sorts of things that we should be telling younger people?
Yeah, I think it's really important, Jo, that we give the same messages. And I think we're very fortunate in New Zealand. We're getting very clear messages from our Prime Minister and from our government, and that should be the voice. Our schools are going to be giving very clear messages. I think it's important as parents we continue that message, because the consistent messages creates predictability. Predictability our nervous system likes. So I wouldn't try and change a lot of the language. I would want to keep it very similar to what we know schools are going to be told. And a lot of it is going to be helping children understand social distancing. They're going to be used to how they go into school, and it's going to be slightly different for them on Monday. To help them understand that, to help them why we have to keep that social distance. And obviously hand washing, really, really important, the hand washing. The schools are going to be so hot on this. Hopefully you have been at home as well, so keep, you know, that one going, the importance of washing hands. And if we feel like we need to cough, sneeze, you know, into the elbow, let's keep the message simple and consistent.
Absolutely. And if you have any sort of concerns about the school, sort of, or keep in sort of good communication with the school and teachers and things like that, and get that reassurance, I guess, as well.
Yeah. And Joe, and I want to say there's schools, you know, they're human as well. They're staff that are having to go through this huge transition themselves. They're no different to us. You know, we're all human beings,
Yeah.
and we're all learning a different way of being. And to some extent, we've all got a level of anxiety about coming out of level 4 to level 3 and now to level 2. And schools are aware of this. You know, we live in an age era where I think the vast majority of schools are absolutely fantastic. Staff are tuned in and they're going to know that children are going to be a little bit anxious. Talk to your teacher. The class teacher is going to be your first port of call.
Absolutely. And so what if your child or a child just refuses point blank to go? How would you handle that situation?
Good question. A lot of that depends on the need to get the child there. You know, do you have to get to work yourself? Are you expected? Which puts a very different picture on things and puts a very different picture on our nervous system and how we react. Because when we're under time pressure, we know we've got to be somewhere. We just want to cajole our child and get them into school. So I guess I'm going to say slightly conflicting things. If a child is absolutely flatly refusing to go, my go-to would be empathise and stay with the child. Try and understand what is the root cause of their anxiety. What's the real biggest thing for them about entering into school, and see whether you can help and talk them through. You know, there's maybe very simple strategies that are going to be in place to help them stay safe. And creating that, okay, who can we make as that person that you can go to? Alerting the class teacher, and it could be every hour that, you know, the teacher has a very discreet check-in with the young person and how they're dealing and how they're coping with things. I'm not somebody that would believe, I would be absolutely against dragging a child screaming and kicking going in, because I don't think that's productive for the child and I don't think it's productive for the parent. I do understand some parents might have to get to work, but I would really encourage you stay with the child. And if you can get them out of the downstairs brain and get them into their upstairs brain thinking, 9 times out of 10 we can normally talk a child round into going. But you can't hurry the steps. If you think you've got to get from step 1 to step 10 in a couple of minutes, you're going to be out of luck, guys. You know, slow it down.
I was just thinking about also the transition, because we've had quite an extended period now in lockdown, of course. So do we have to, is there anything we should be mindful of for ourselves, but also the children with this transition? Because I guess there's kind of just making the transition, our lives have changed quite dramatically, and now we're going back to kind of a normal but not quite normal, so there's a lot of adjustments going on. Would you sort of have any comments on that?
Yeah, and I think underlying all of that, if we think about our neurobiology, we're wired for social connection. We have a natural drive to connect with other people. We're a very community-based human beings. So vast majority of us will have that drive that we want to connect with our friends. It will be the unlogical thinking about, I'm not going to be safe. So I believe that many people want the change. They want to go down to level 2. They want to go down to level 1. They want life to resume as normal because we want that social connection.
Absolutely, absolutely. What if a child is really struggling to the point where they're having, you know, panic attacks? So, you know, at that point, and a parent feels that perhaps they need a little bit more help to manage, what would you sort of recommend there?
So if everything we've talked about this evening, Joe, isn't working, I would say that you're probably needing to engage some professional help to support your child and you through that transition. There's some absolutely fantastic services out there. As a first port of call, if you didn't want to engage with a professional, I don't know if any of you are aware of the Sparklers website. you kind of shake your heads if you don't know, or yes and no. Okay, so Sparklers was set up by I'm All Right. So we've seen those posters around post-earthquake. So it was set up to help schools and their families. So if you just go on to sparklers.co.nz, there are a huge amount of resources on there. And if you sign up with them, you get a weekly email from them giving you activities and ideas to do. And they were doing a huge amount through the lockdown, and activities that you could play with your children at home. They're always giving teachers ideas. So behind the team is psychologists, psychiatrists and therapists, and they're coming up with ways to support our mental health. And there's resources on there from, just being with mum, being with dad, being in a blended family. They've really covered every area. So I really encourage you to look at those resources and see if they help you. If they don't, Right Services, Right Time would be a really good place to connect and see whether you can get some professional support for your young person. And many schools, sorry, just jumping in there again, many schools have Manaraki in place. So it may well be that you can just let your class teacher know, and they will forward that on to Manaraki, and a worker will be in contact with you.
Oh, that's all great advice. So the last question that I had on the list here, Beverley, was I'm not sure how my child feels. What do I do? And that could be quite, with teenagers, that's definitely, my kids are in their 20s now, but I know I went through that period, especially during their teens, where talking to mum wasn't kind of high on their list of priorities. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so can I separate it into children and teens? Because even sometimes children do not have the language to be able to explain how I feel. And you can say to a child, "Oh, how are you feeling?" And they kind of look at you as if you're an alien. Often children communicate by their behavior, so it's their behavior that tells us how they're feeling. Yeah. So it's understanding that. And the same rule applies, is empathize with them. If a child is misbehaving and they don't want to go and clean their teeth because they want to prolong bedtime, because they don't want to get up in the morning and go to school, it's having an awareness of why they're behaving like that and stepping in with, it feels as if it's really hard to go and clean your teeth and you really don't want to go to bed, because I think getting up in the morning is going to be really hard for you. Playful face, playful tone of voice, and talking to them and staying with that. So for little ones, naming the feelings for them, rather than getting into that heightened state of, "Oh my God, I just want them to clean their teeth and get to bed," and they're just being difficult and awkward. No, they're not. That's their way of communicating to you. And in some ways, if I stretch that over to teenagers, often they're not that different. Their behavior is obviously age appropriate. So they're not going to just not want to go and clean their teeth. They may be a bit rude. They may start swearing at you. They may be just not wanting to engage, slam the bedroom door, don't want to come down and sit at the dinner table, all those sorts of behaviors. What is that telling you? That would be telling me that my child is a little bit worried and anxious about something. So again, I'd go in and name it with them.
Oh, that's just great.
Does that make sense?
That's brilliant. It's just brilliant. It's just so fascinating to listen to you. And before we get into the Q&A, Beverley, did you have anything else that you would like to add?
No, I would just like to summarise to you guys, and the take home for me, what I want you to take home, is to understand our neurobiology and to understand it's not cognitive. When children behave this way, when we behave this way, we have no control over it. If our neurobiology is detecting that we're unsafe, it will act in a way to protect us. So our head may be saying, "I'm safe, everything's fine," but our body might be saying something different. And if we can understand that, it can help us respond to our children, and it can help us respond to ourselves.
Mm, mm. Oh, that's just fantastic. And as you've mentioned, next week in part 2, we're going to be talking to Neve Ross Wallace, who is here with us tonight, and we'll be going into a lot more detail with some techniques that we can use as women to really get ourselves back to that place of calm. But you've just explained it so brilliantly, Beverley. I love the downstairs, upstairs thinking, and yeah, I can certainly applying that to myself and also my family members. So no, thank you so much. So if we perhaps if you'd like to unmute yourself, Beck, and have you got some questions?
Yes, I do. Hey, everyone.
Okay.
So one of the questions, and I think this is going to be happening in a couple of places, is some parents are actually being told, basically drop and run. Yeah. So get that child to a teacher and get out of there as fast as you can. And that's obviously not sitting well with parents. And I think that if parents aren't comfortable with that, they're not going to be comfortable doing it either. What would you suggest parents do with that?
Okay, at the probably frustration of schools that might listen to this thing, I would ignore that. If I am not comfortable dropping and running with my child, do not do it. Absolutely not. Because your children will be picking up that you're anxious and worried, and that's not going to set them up well for the day. If you need to hang around and you need to check that they're going off well, and you need to talk to the teacher, then that's what you need to do.
I would agree with that. Probably the social worker in me would probably email that teacher and say, that's not going to work for us, and say, this is what we're going to talk about and this is what I'd like to do. How does that sound for you? And start that dialogue with the teacher. Would you?
Lovely idea. Yeah, and I do understand, Bex, that, there's one teacher, there could be 30 parents that all wants a little bit of time, but I guess my head would be saying, well, if the school knows that the parents are a little bit anxious, they can set up something. They can set up a coffee morning in small groups. We know that we can't have much more than 10, but they could have a coffee morning and a little bubble group where people could have a coffee and check in. But then school's not going to know that if you don't communicate to them.
Yeah, definitely. I love that idea of maybe finding a wee buddy from your class to have that, little coffee date with. But I think definitely don't leave it until that day. So just so you know, what we're being told, for instance, at our school is we're not allowed on site. So what we will be doing at our school is we will be giving our kids a kiss and a cuddle at the gate, and they'll be making their way in. So what I've done with my 6 and 8-year-old is we've really talked through what that's going to look like for them. So Mama's going to give you a kiss and a cuddle at the gate, and May's going to help you. Ruby, make sure you hang your bag up, and May's going to walk you into class. So I'm taking them through what that would look like. That's going to be a big shift for a lot of our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. But the fact that you've taken the time, Bex, to actually talk that through, it's now predictable. If it's predictable, it will feel safe. We may not totally like it, but we know what's going to happen, and that will help us feel safe. And if you can talk through that with your children, this is what it's going to look like tomorrow morning, help them talk through any worries or concerns, then you can do the reassurance part, and then they know what to expect in the morning.
Yeah. Do you think maybe negotiating that you can drop your child off a little bit earlier or a little bit later so that there's not so many children at that time would be a good option?
I would say if you know it's going to be an issue, that your child is particularly anxious, then I would. Yeah. Some people are kind of born, I think Nathan Wallace has kind of put it on a level of 1 to 5. Some people are born genetically only at a 1 with anxiety. Some people are born at sort of 4, they're more anxious. And if you're kind of at that higher level through something like this, you're going to be even higher. So if you know that that's you, or you know that that's your children, arrange something different for them.
Yeah. So some children are a little bit sick of us saying breathe and all these things. Should we change our language when we're trying to get our child to be calm and breathe? If they're going, oh, I don't want to hear that, Mum.
Yeah, okay. So again, I would be saying, stay with them and empathize with them. It's so annoying when I talk about this, but you know why I talk about it? Because I know it will really help you feel calmer. And I know mum's really annoying, isn't she? And then find a fun way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds great.
Sorry, Bex, can I just, before you go on, can I just add into that? The other ways that we can do it, singing is working with our breath. So naturally, you're controlling your breath when you're singing. Wind instruments. If you have to play a wind instrument, that's working with your breath. So there's other ways of working with our breath.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, to just try a different tack to do the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, what was so calming ourselves is calming our children the same? Do we use the same methods?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter.
In an adult version.
Yeah. All right. Let me see if there's have I covered them all? Are there any more questions in the room? Does anybody want to post another question? No questions at this stage. That's all right. So Beverley, if we really think our child's going to struggle, do you think postponing it to starting on the second day would be a good option, or do you really want to aim for that first day?
I would aim for the first day, because somewhere in that child's mind, they're going to be knowing that all their friends are back and they're not.
Yeah.
And if they're that anxious and worried about it, postponing it is not likely to ease the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're just going to prolong the anxiety, and in fact, it will probably get worse, because a lot of children, not everyone, but a lot of children, once they get back and they realise, okay, this is going to become the new norm, and they'll settle in, they'll enjoy their learning, they'll enjoy being with their friends, and it all come down.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned sparklers, so one of the things they suggested on their site is plan your child's favourite lunch, and get them to plan what's going to be in their lunchbox that day.
Lovely idea. Yeah. Again, something for them to look forward to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my kids are having Nutella sandwiches that day. Not Marmite.
Yeah. And also, Bex, what was triggered in my thinking then, remember when they come home from school, they're likely to be more tired. Because their nervous system has had a little bit more of a workout. They've been a bit anxious about getting to school. They've kept their body a little bit tighter in preparation for it all. It's so new. It's so different. Expect them to be tired. And normally tired children are a little bit grumpy. They don't want to do as they're told. They don't want to eat their dinner. They don't want to go to bed. It normally comes out in those ways. Be a little bit patient and be a bit kind and compassionate.
Great. And could you build that in, we're going to go to school, but after school we're going to watch the favourite movie or do something like that? So
what a lovely idea. Yeah. What are we going to do to chill out when you get home? What's going to be the absolute favourite? And if they've got a particular film that they like doing, that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a little drink and a refreshment to nourish the body, and we're going to chill out and cuddle on the sofa together and watch the movie.
So at our house, that means we're going to watch Beauty and the Beast for the 7th time. So
the things we endure as parents. And for teenagers, guys, that might mean they need a little bit more FaceTime. And I'm thinking it's Snapchat. And a lot of parents that I see over the time get really, really anxious about screen time and how much screen time children should have. And with teenagers, it's often a real battle about parents' expectations of how much screen time to how much they think they should have. But just in this transition period, I would encourage parents to be a little bit more lenient and let the youngsters have that bit of time to chill out when they come home.
Yeah.
What do you need when you're tired?
That's awesome. So we've got a question about obviously people are loving what they're hearing, but we're wanting some hints and tips to deal with clients who suffer from anxiety.
Yeah. Okay. So again, with anxiety, it is the body's response to threat. So when we perceive that something is a threat to us, and this could be anything, guys, from a smell can activate it, somebody's look, somebody's tone of voice, a situation, something can trigger off our anxiety, and we're all the same in that. So when a child is experiencing that, it's helping them understand it and not to be frightened of it, and helping them to manage their bodies. So when I work with children that are very, very anxious, I'm getting parents to do lots of sing-songs with them, lots of fun activities to help the body calm down. And once the body calms down and is in a more regulated state, then you can hear what somebody is saying.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot try and get somebody, if we take it to upstairs, downstairs brain, if they're locked into that downstairs brain, so they're really emotional, they're really anxious, they're really worried about something, they can't activate the upstairs brain. It's not until they calm down a bit, then they can start processing it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Or have I waffled too much on that?
No, that makes sense. We've got a question. So there's a young person that has quite regressed and has started bedwetting again, which was, had been a problem, but they'd overcome it. What kind of suggestions would you give a parent if their child has started bedwetting again?
Yeah, again, so for a child who's started again, so they had recovered and now they've started doing it, again, I would empathise with them and talk with them. You know, you must be really upset about that.
Mm-hmm.
But we overcome it before. I remember what we did, and I would talk them through those steps, and we can do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yeah.
so
So
not
feeling
shaming.
confident that they've been there, they've done it, and we'll do it again.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Not to shame them, because they're going to be feeling shame for wetting the bed. And it's just about empathizing with them, connecting with them, and giving that reassurance. We've done it once, we're going to do it again.
Do you think doing some things, some calming, relaxing things prior to bedtime would be helpful?
Absolutely fantastic. Yep. And again, and you're going to hear me say this over and over again, you know, get some music going.
Mm-hmm.
Get some breathing exercises going. If you're into yoga, yoga is absolutely fantastic because it's movement and it's working with the breath.
Perfect, of course. Are there any other questions that anyone else would like to ask? We may even, do you think, Jo, can people unmute themselves and ask their own questions?
I was just gonna say, when you were talking about wind instruments before, I was just thinking about the recorder, how lovely it would be.
Yeah. Do I want 3 recorders going off in my house? But I'm sure I've contributed to the increase of children learning wind instruments, because that's normally one of the first things I get parents to do if they have a very anxious child, and say, do they want to learn to play a musical instrument? Yes, wind instrument.
Wow.
No, I think that would be lovely if everyone would like, you know, if they wanted to unmute, and then we could just have a sort of a general discussion to finish. That would be lovely. So perhaps if I go to gallery view now, Amber, would that be okay for the, yep? Yeah. Okay, brilliant. So has anybody got any anything that they'd like to comment on about the things that Beverley's talked about, or any further questions that you'd like to ask?
Everyone's just loved listening.
We've answered all the questions. You've just been it's been just such a fascinating, I've just been completely enraptured in everything you've been saying, and I can't believe the time has gone so fast. It's I've just got so many great tips already, and thank you so much. So is everybody sure?
Can I be a bit cheeky?
I was just thinking, often when a child gets really anxious, the parent gets quite anxious. And so it's often very difficult to calm the child with a sing-song voice, and so it's like, really, it's for the adult has to get the skills to pass the skills on.
Yeah, and also, Chrissy, when our child is quite anxious, we may not feel anxious ourselves, but we could be worried because we don't know how to help them, and our children misread that from us then. and they see the worry in our face because we
Yeah.
so desperately want to help them and
Yeah.
ease their anxiety, which in fact feeds the anxiety
Mm-hmm.
and makes it worse. So you're absolutely right. As a parent, we need to try and regulate ourselves and calm ourselves and think, okay, I can see my child is really anxious about this. I'm just going to breathe. I'm going to center myself. I'm feeling calmer. And now I'm going to stay with my child.
Yeah, I was
and
just thinking of things like when Beck said that some people have been told to drop their kids and run, or everyone's congregating at the school gate and you've all got to have social distance. And so parents are probably going to feel quite anxious about what they've got to go into and how they're going to social space and taking their kids out into a space again. So I think there's a lot of this has to happen with the parent first.
Yes. So as a parent, I would be encouraging you to think about, how am I going to cope with that? You know, Monday morning when I've got to drop my child off at the gate and I'm not allowed through the gate and I've got to keep a certain amount of distance from everybody else, what do I need and how am I going to cope with that? And it may well be that you set up a coffee buddy with a couple of friends or parents of the school, if that's possible. It may be actually when you leave, you need to go for a cycle, or I don't know, whatever works for you. But it's actually thinking through yourself, how am I going to cope with this? And part of our heads will be, I'm not quite sure because I don't know what it's going to look like till I get there. Yeah. So what could I do on that walk to school or that drive to school to keep myself calm? Now, I would be encouraging, if you're in the car, get some music going and get you all singing. And if not, I would be walking and humming or marching, swinging their arms. Think of something very rhythmic because that will help the body.
I wondered if because you know we're going to be having a great discussion next week with Neve as well around some wonderful mindfulness techniques and more tips for taming anxiety. But I wondered if anyone was interested to share their top well-being tip for kind of keeping control of anxiety. I mean, my one, you've just touched on it before, Beverley, is definitely yoga, and I try to do it every day, and I know that when I'm not doing my regular yoga practice, that's when things might tip over a little bit. I find I can kind of maintain my equilibrium quite well. But does anyone else have any other tips that they'd like to share, perhaps? What sort of keeps you on track? Kelly? Is that water, Kelly? Are we drunk?
No, it's not water. It is definitely wine.
And again, I'm not anti-drink and I enjoy a glass of wine myself, but remember that it can be a suppressive and it shouldn't be our go-to. I kind of have this thing in my own head. If I feel I need a glass of wine, then I won't have one. It's when I just want a glass of wine because I enjoy the taste. But if it's to help me relax or unwind, then I won't go to it. I will put in other strategies first. That's my response to that.
I think also one other thing there's been a lot of research going into is like your gut health and your mental health as well, like food and what we put into our body, what we're fueling ourselves with, and how that can affect our mental health as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Amber. And actually, sorry to take you back to polyvagal theory, and I didn't explain in the beginning. Our vagus nerve is part of our autonomic nervous system, and actually comes from our brainstem. It comes round our jaw, so it's connected to our hearing, it's connected to our jawline or our chewing, or moving from side to side. It then comes down our back and around our rib cage, and it's connected to all of our organs in our body. So when our vagal tone isn't very good, it can affect our gut, our digestive system. People have irritable bowel syndrome. There's so much research in the last 10 years that come from polyvagal, and it is down to our vagus nerve. If it's not in a very good state, it can affect and impact all of our organs in our body.
It's incredible.
It really is incredible, and that really links into that gut brain health. Our gut needs to be healthy. But putting the polyvagal lens on, our gut can be healthy. Food, really, really important, the right sort of nutrients, but it's our vagal tone.
That's interesting. Beck, what's your go-to?
I suppose what was just going through my head at the moment was just being a stuck record. I'm thinking about the kids. I'm thinking about what I'm going to be saying to them. Like, we know that our teachers would have thought about what we're doing. We know they'll have a plan. You know, we just need to listen to our teachers, and they're really looking forward to seeing us. But also as a social worker, I remember often when we had a plan, even teachers would go, "Oh, I'm so freaked out," and then I realized we had a plan. I think really, if you've got kids that you think are going to struggle, have a plan, keep going over what the plan is and saying, hey, remember what we're going to do? If we struggle, which, you know, might happen, we're just going to take some time, we're going to stop, and we're not going to keep moving until we're both feeling better. So, yeah, definitely having a plan is such a good thing.
Yeah. And plans are predictable. Can make life more predictable. The other thing that I thought about when you were speaking there, Bex, is also those moments in life that makes your heart sing and makes you smile inside. And it's about, how do I increase those moments?
Yeah. I have this image of me walking to school with my children making up silly songs now.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah, one thing I'm going to definitely be doing, which I'm not great at, is I'm going to get up early that morning, and I'm going to have myself so ready so that I can just be there for the kids and really kind of hook into what's going on for them, instead of going, I'm running late.
Yeah, which will be a vast majority of the households, because if anybody like my household, we've got used to later mornings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
Is there anyone else that would like to share anything before we wrap up?
I don't always drink on a Wednesday night, just saying.
No judgment.
I'm just going to put it in. I was just going to ask Beverley, because this has been absolutely incredible, and I just love that, you know, you bring the science into everyday life, which is just pretty incredible. Have you got any references or anything that we can read that is in, you know, mommy language, that, you know, that you can refer us to?
Yep. So from the neuroscience perspective, there's a fantastic author. Some of you may be aware of him, Dr. Dan Siegel. And one of his go-to books for children that I highly recommend is, oh God, it's just gone out of my head then. How could it go out of my head? Rebecca, help me out. The Whole Brain
Is that
Child.
the upper brain or the bottom one? Pardon?
No, The Whole Brain Child.
The Whole Brain Child.
And Dan Siegel is the most amazing psychiatrist, neuro researcher, but he really makes it parent-friendly language.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah. And he's also got a follow-up book for teens, and I haven't got that. Sorry, it's down in my office. I can't remember the exact title. But there's another book that he's written called No Drama Discipline. And absolutely fantastic. Very neuroscience based. He explains what's happening in the child's brain and how to work with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Would anyone else like to say anything? I've got just 3 slides to show you at the end. So we might just have a wee look at those now, and then if you think of anything, you'll have one more opportunity to ask Beverley. So I'll just share them now. So if you'd like to, you can feel free to, or I could even, if these are helpful, I could send them out to you in a PDF. But here is, if you'd like to contact Beverley, here's her contact information at Anderley Therapeutic Services. And here's some of the services that Beverley offers. And these are some of the other services that Beverley recommends. So if you're worried or your child is anxious about going back to school, as Beverley's talked about, she recommends getting in touch with the school first. And I think you did mention all of these services actually, Beverley, Mana Aki, Sparklers, and Right Service, Right Time. And I've been on their websites today, and there's some fantastic information there on all those websites. There's lots to read. There's some great activities actually for on Mana Aki. There was a great talking to your child about COVID-19, and it was really aimed at young children, but there were some brilliant activities there. Might even be a good thing to do perhaps over the weekend with little ones. I thought that was really cool. And Sparklers, which is the free wellbeing toolkit for primary students, with lots of activities there as well. And Right Service, Right Time, if you're really needing some extra help and support, there's a whole list of different service providers on there, and if you still can't find what you're looking for, they will connect with you and help you to make sure that you get in touch with the right people. So that's wonderful. And then if crisis intervention is needed, these are the list of services that you can access. The police for immediate risk of harm, how do you say, I can never say that.
Oranga Tamariki.
Oranga, I know, I always get that word wrong. Oranga Tamariki. The Ministry for Children, and then the other crisis intervention services there as well. So I can send those slides out to you if you'd like, with those little bits of information, and might even add in those references there for Dr. Dan Siegel's books as well. So that would be great. So I can stop sharing now. So I think we're pretty much at the end. Is there anything that you'd like to say?
I think this is great. For me, I've been lucky enough to work for Beverley, but even though I know this, I need reminders, and I need to stop and I need to think about it in a time when I'm calm and have some clear plans in my head. So I found this really, really useful. So thank you so much, Beverley, for your time. I think just your manner, your way of communicating is just calming in itself.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
And I would really like to end off by saying, guys, also be kind to yourselves, kind and compassionate to yourselves, as you're having to go through this as well, and you're having to support your children, you're worried about your children, look after yourselves as well. When I say think about something nice to do with the children when they come home from school, think about something nice to do for yourself when they go to bed.
It's a great idea. Well, thank you so much to everyone for coming. It's been lovely to see you all here. And don't forget that next week, same time, same back channel, we've got Neve, who was very, very much looking forward to hearing your lovely wisdom as well. And thank you. Great to see you tonight here as well. So. It's been so exciting. We've done our first online Uniting Canterbury Women workshop.
Well done to you guys.
It's just so exciting, and because we were kind of thinking, how are we going to, connect? And isn't it amazing what technology can do? And I think we've all learned so much. I think we've all had to upskill, haven't we? So quite rapidly. And it's just a wonderful thing. I think it's going to change the way we do stuff, and I think it's so exciting. So, Beverley, you've just been amazing. Thank you so much again for your generosity. We just really appreciate it. And I think we should all give Beverley a big clap for